I've been so eager for you all to hear this interview, for me to be able to do this interview. Hell, I was trying to get Brian Hardin 2 days earlier on the show, mistaking the calendar dates. And it is going to be a fun episode as Drake Athletics Director Brian Hardin is joining us here on the Media Row podcast with me, Justin Miller, of course, sponsored by Kelly Zollenepper and Stevens Automotive. But Brian Hardin, someone who has had a lot of pressure on him, losing a men's basketball coach, losing a football coach, trying to get new hires for those. He hits them out of the park with Woodley and Henderson. It is going to be a fun time to be a Bulldog in the fall and winter, but also Drake opts in with a bunch of other teams after the House settlement, which allows the colleges to pay the student athletes directly. So that's why we're having Brian Hardin on, and I'm really excited for you all to hear about it because there's a lot of good happening here for the Des Moines hometown team in the Drake Bulldogs, and I'm really excited to share this interview with you guys. But before we get to it, need to give a shout out to Kelly's Little Nipper at 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. The historic Kelly's Little Nipper, a wonderful place, great food, great drinks, and even better community over there in the staple of Des Moines. Kelly's Little Nipper. I just had a few buddies send me messages the other day as they were at trivia night. That looked amazing. I know I have family members eager to go to Kelly's Little Nipper for their trivia nights, but trivia on Wednesdays. You got live music on the weekends. This weekend, though, huge news, and they've been posting it all over their social media, which you must follow. Corn cob eating contest, 3 o'clock Saturday. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be fun. You can follow along on social media and go there and maybe compete in it as well. But it's going to be a great time over at 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines. Kelly's Little Nipper, proud sponsor of the Media Row podcast. So Brian, first off, my apologies for messing up on Tuesday. I sent you that message of being like, hey, does Tuesday the 10th work? And then woke up and I look at my calendar and I was like, oh, I never flipped it.
It's all right. Thursday the 10th works just as well. So yeah, Tuesday I was tied up in a offsite retreat with our senior leadership team, so could not have been able to squeeze this in, but glad that we can make Thursday the 10th happen.
No, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I know your schedule is super busy. We were just talking about before I clicked record of, I mean, if you as an athletic director, I mean, I'm happy you're able to find a few weeks to be able to go and do vacations with the families because I'm sure those are few and far in between.
It can be, yeah. So trying to intentionally carve out time to get away, and we'll do that. We got a spot up in Michigan, just up by Traverse City, that we always will go and sit on. I've been doing it since I was 6 months old. My mom's side of the
Oh,
family,
wow.
I'm from Chicagoland area, and they've been doing it for over 60 years. And so it's a great chance for us to kind of go sit up there. I'll see, some of my cousins, my aunts and uncles, my siblings will be up there with their kids. So my boys and their cousins will get a chance to play together. So it's just it's our little slice of heaven. We kind of have like a tear off calendar, at least I do in my mind each day, like how many more days till we can get back up to Glen Arbor. And so yeah, looking forward to it, but a lot to get done here over the next week or so before I can officially kind of punch out for a little bit. There's a lot to get done to kind of put us in position to be successful for the next year.
Yeah, so really wanted to have you on to talk about, the ruling and opting in. Teams are now, you had to opt in by July 1st. And they say, you had until July 1st to opt in, but truly, how long did it take you to be like, okay, this is going to be where we're going? Because now in the age of college athletics, you have to, it feels like you have to opt in if you want to be competitive.
Um, it feels that way. Yeah, I mean, it certainly feels like you've got to make that commitment. You got to be find a way to be invested in that space. Uh, we were really on the fence, and then when the judge's ruling was came down on June 6th that she had accepted the settlement with the grandfathering language, then that pushed us definitely into doing it. So I think trying to figure out what that was going to look like, without grandfathering would have presented a challenge for a school like Drake and a lot of others like us, where you need to have the enrollment is such a huge driving factor for your institution and for your athletics department. So then when we have the ability to keep our kids around for the next few years, while we work down to those roster cap numbers that are also part of the settlement, then it made it much more palatable for us to be able to jump in and find a way for us to participate in this space in the 25-26 school year.
Yeah, and maybe for the listeners who may not understand it or looked into the settlement, what do you mean by the grandfathering language? Why
Yeah.
was that something that was kind of hump that made you go, okay, we're going to opt in?
Yeah, so I mean, there's the back pay provision and then the kind of the forward-looking piece. And so the back pay piece, everyone, whether you opt in or opt out, you had some liability you had to pay over the next 10 years. So that was something that it did not matter to the schools. It didn't matter whether if you opted in or not, you were stuck with that. So for us, we're on the hook for $282,000 a year for the next 10 years. This first year, we got a little bit of a break because the NCAA found $55 million laying around and was able to basically cut, what we owe by a third. So I think we owe 187,000 for this first year, and then 282 for years 2 through 10. So that's the back pay piece. Looking forward is kind of where the grandfathering piece comes in, because there's the element that everyone always talks about in terms of the ability to share revenue at the $20.5 million mark. But also part of that, if you're going to opt in, you have to accept other terms such as the roster caps. So as before, there was a limit on how many scholarships you could put. Now they put a limit on how many you can have on your roster, and you can scholarship everybody on your roster if you want to. So what that meant was, look at football. So football in the past, there hadn't been a roster cap. So you could have 120, 130, 140 guys on your football roster if you wanted to. Now, if you're at the FBS level, you could only provide up to 85 scholarships. At the FCS levels, up to 63. We're, of course, in the Pioneer Football League, so we don't provide any scholarships. But what the House settlement terms that they introduced these roster caps, and it went sport by sport to identify what's the maximum number of athletes you can have on your roster. And so for football, 105 became the new number. That if you're going to opt in and you're going to share revenue with athletes, you also have to have a football roster that does not exceed 105 student athletes. Well, in that sport, that would be problematic for us because we'll have north of 120 on our football roster this year. From a soccer standpoint, 28 is the number. Well, we've been in the low 30s the last couple of years. There are some other sports where we've been, a few over what the new roster cap is. Before the grandfathering piece was introduced and accepted, it was assumed that the roster caps would have to happen, a week prior to your first fall competition. So what we were kind of hung up on is, gosh, if you opt in, yeah, we have the ability to share revenue, but we also have to reduce our rosters, and we're going to lose a couple dozen student athletes from our overall allotment that we have at Drake here. And we need as many student athletes here, just as we need as many students at Drake as possible.
Hmm.
We typically have around 375 student athletes, and by opting in at those numbers, we would have been down around 350. We would have had to try to figure out how to account for 25 students that we would have lost. And a lot of them are paying tuition back to Drake. And so that would have impacted maybe the school's ability to share and to help us from a revenue standpoint through the university support line that helps our budget. If we lost 25 students, that's a significant number. So we would have had to try to figure out how to offset that. Now, the grandfathering piece is really helpful because that basically says that anyone who was on a roster last year and or was committed by a certain date for the next year, they're protected. And so we had to create a list of designated student athletes is the term, and we had to submit that list by Monday, July 6th of kind of, who are those athletes who are designated student athletes, and then that list, those athletes don't count against our number. And so
Okay.
we had to create that list in good faith and submit it to the NCAA, which we did. Um, and so now those teams, so football, we
Hmm.
can continue to have north of 120 athletes on our roster because we submitted a list that would take us down to at or below the 105 number. And so that's how when you add all that together and we're able to now, create a list of designated student athletes that are preserved, the roster spot is preserved. We can be over that limit until they leave Drake. uh, then we can opt in because the that concern around the roster limits did not exist anymore.
So, yeah, once those players graduate, then you're going to have to meet
Yes.
that roster
Exactly. Yeah.
expectation.
So,
Okay.
so over the next few years, by in the next 3 to 5 years, we'll need to be down at that mark of 105. Presuming we don't have any other athletes with that designated student athlete tag still on our roster that would not account against that 105 number for football and 28 for soccer and other sports.
And do you know what the number is for men's and women's basketball? Was
15,
that a big
15.
challenge?
It's
15?
15. 15. We had 17 on our men's basketball roster a couple years ago. Women's basketball has generally been in the 13, 14 range. Men's basketball this year, I think, will be around that 13, 14 number.
Okay.
So yeah, so we'll be safe in that space.
So it's funny because we were asking about, how long did it take you to truly opt in? But this is something, despite there being a few things that you were concerned about, as an athletic director, this was something you were having to prepare for, I assume, years prior, just with the changing landscape.
Yeah, it's just something that you monitor and try to, run through different scenarios of okay, what could happen, and based on this outcome, okay, here's how we're going to respond. Okay, if it's something different, okay, this is what we would do. Uh, and so yeah, it was something that we kind of had a feeling that it was going to go in this direction, so we weren't having to make it up on the fly. Now there are some pieces that we're having to get caught up on pretty quickly here in terms of contracts with student athletes and distribution of payment, what that's going to look like. Then some working with interviewing various vendors and what that could be. That's kind of, yeah, it's taken up some of our time over the last month. But those are all been great conversations and are all going to lead us in a direction that we need to be in anyways.
And yeah, that direction we were talking about, of like, this is just the way you're going to have to kind of play the game to be competitive. And I mean, you've been in this position for a while now. Just how do you stick with, the integrity of the game while also adjusting and moving forward and not staying stagnant? Is there a weird balance? What is that process like? Who do you talk to? I just
Yeah,
feel like it's
I
a
think
war room.
yeah, a lot of it kind of as we've talked with our coaches is just we need to always adjust to the times that we're in, not be afraid to evolve. There is some sort of college athletics Darwinism happening right now where you can either evolve or get left behind.
Mhm.
And so we're going to do that. We constantly we'll talk with our coaches about trying to find ways to reinvent themselves. It's a best practice for any business out there. When you get to be at the top, you need to continue to find ways to reinvent yourself because others are monitoring what you're doing and may try to copy that or try to do it better than you are. So therefore, you need to find some way to keep an advantage. And that's kind of been our focus in terms of how do we continue to do that while remaining true to who we are, understanding kind of what our North Star is and, in who we are, who we're not going to be. And so I think that we've been able to do that. We did that through how the Do Great Collective was created and kind of then what that looked like. Now kind of moving that in-house, we'll continue to adjust and to adapt to the surroundings that we find ourselves in, while also making sure that we don't lose sight that this is still a people business. And as much as maybe some of the things in our industry are changing, it still comes down to who's in our department, who are our student athletes, who are our coaches, who are our staff, making sure that we're surrounded by people that we want to go through life with on a daily basis. Uh, that last year's men's basketball team beat 3 or 4 teams who had rosters that were receiving 10 to 20 times more than what our men's team was. We did that because we had great people. And we have great people around our program that are still here that are putting us in position to dream big and to create wonderful memories for everyone involved in Drake athletics. That doesn't change. So if we start from a really good place of getting great people, having a really good culture, and then providing the resources that our coach and staff need in order to put themselves in position and our athletes in position to be successful. So yeah, we will adjust and we'll learn and we'll certainly move, with this exciting new time, but we also aren't going to lose sight of kind of who we are and what's allowed us to get to this point.
I think a lot of people had the same feeling when they heard about the settlement of just what does this now mean for NIL collectives? Because I remember talking with Brent Bloom back when I was with iHeart, and he was saying, the goal as a NIL collective is that one day we don't have to be here, And so I just wonder, we had Ryan Boatman on the show like a few weeks after the settlement, and there was a lot of uncertainties. Now, as a month has gone by, kind of what is the future for the Do Great Collective, and just is there going to be a mixture of both what the athletics department can do and what the collectives can do?
Yep. So again, all right. I think that a lot of what the collective had done is going to end up coming into Drake Athletics. So certainly a lot of the administrative tasks, a lot of the back end stuff in terms of helping the guys with taxation forms and making sure that all is buttoned up is going to happen through us. We're actually going to hire. We're going to use an outside vendor to help in this space, both with the taxation forms and the payment distribution piece. I think that we're going to assume more of from the fundraising side of things in terms of being able to communicate with folks and follow up and make sure that they're getting the proper recognition and thanks through thank you notes and reminders of opportunities to support the program here. But there's still going to be a significant need for those folks with the collective to be around and to help us with the transition, to help make those contacts with folks who were so generous and giving to the collective, that we're going to need them to stay involved, because really, I mean, the bulk of what we're going to be doing with Drake Athletics, at least in this next year or two, from how we're going to fund this shared revenue piece, is going to be through philanthropies. It's going to be through gifts from our donors. That's what's going to continue to put us in position to stay towards the top of the Missouri Valley Conference. So um, there will be whereas before maybe the gifts would have gone to the collective, we're going to divert
Mhm.
those to our new excellence funds here at Drake, and donors can know without any concern that that gift will be tax deductible. But we're also, I mean, I'm going to put together an advisory board of folks who, were really integral to the success of the collective over the last few years, and make sure that we're doing things still in the spirit that they had intended. It may look, and the name of it may be a little bit different for what folks will send their check into, but the result we're expecting will be very similar.
And then just, we were talking about how you opt in, now you're going to be competitive, continue to be competitive with just the golden era, it feels like, for Drake right now. What is the future like now for the Drake Bulldogs now that you're opted in?
I don't think it has to look or feel too much different. I mean, it's remembering what got us here, and that still is kind of our path forward, is making sure that we have the right student athletes. Our model has been that we're student athlete centered, coach driven, and fully supported by our staff. That's kind of what we focused on in terms of, and so that doesn't change. It's being able to provide the resources that our coaches need to be successful, and that has what has allowed us to do some really special things over the last handful of years. That's what's going to continue to be what's going to put us in position to be successful over the next many years to come. So, I had somebody ask me on July 1st, did it feel like it was a whole new day? No, it felt like it was Tuesday. And then I got up and we kept kind of going about our business. And there will be some subtle adjustments, going through a process and actually negotiating contracts with student athletes and or their representation. That's something new and different. That'll be a change. Working with a outside vendor to help with payment processing to student athletes. That's different. That's something that we haven't really had to deal with before. But we can handle that. We can manage that. I think that fans, what they're going to see, their ability to connect with our athletes, what they love about Drake in terms of the quality people we have around our program, their ability to get to know these kids, not just as a jersey number, but as a person, is still going to exist. We're still going to play an exciting brand of ball. We're still going to have a great arena to come down to and to fill up. We're still going to want to go on the road and take over St. Louis during Arch Madness, and during our women's basketball tournament this year is in Coralville, so we're going to want to make sure that we do a great job there. So all that stuff is going to kind of be the same. That there are some new changes that we're dealing with, but I think we've got that under control in our department here, and I feel like knock on wood, we're in a pretty good spot, heading into the middle of July.
You bring up, how just fans can connect with the players, not only in the jersey numbers, but as student athletes and as people. I always thought Drake was one of the most special places where you could be able to do that. I remember being like 12 years old, hanging out with Richard Carter, Aaron Hawley after games, and like being able to meet their families too. And it was such a cool experience. But so fans will still be able to do that. But what might change, how will fans be able to give back? They were able to donate to the Do Great Collective. Just how are they able to give back to the student athletes?
Yep, the exact same way that they were doing it before with the collective. Now it's just going to come in and it'll go through our excellence funds at Drake University. So, and you can earmark that through, an excellence fund set up in any of our sports here. So it's a process that you can, it's available online. You can already go on right now and participate in that manner. So, certainly want everyone to understand that the need is still there, and that the ease of doing it is still exists too, in terms of just going through what we have on our Bulldog Club website and identifying, an excellence fund with one of our sports and making sure that that gets committed over. And yeah, our athletes and coaches will be very appreciative for it.
So we know you're going to, Michigan to hang out with the family here in a few weeks. But what can fans look forward to, once all hell breaks loose in August and we blink our eyes and we're kicking off football season and basketball's right around the corner? What can fans start getting really excited for?
Yeah, I'm excited for our athletes to get back here. I'm not, I want to get some time away at the lake for a little bit. I
You
want to be
deserve it.
Yeah, I
I
want
mean,
to
you're
make sure
all
that
over the
everybody's able to kind
place.
of enjoy some downtime. Our staff puts in a ton of time, and so hope everybody wants to get away. Let's get out of the office for a little bit. But yeah, our athletes will be back here in a few weeks. First part of August, we'll see. Soccer's and volleyball and football kind of rolling in here, and then cross country comes in a little bit later in August. And so, before we know it, we'll be right back at it this fall. I'm really excited about. I mean, those four sport team programs with both soccer's and volleyball and football just were fantastic last year. I think we had three runner-up finishes and a championship between those four sports. So really excited about what that's going to look like for this upcoming year. I think that there's been a ton of enthusiasm around football, and that's been just great to see. And I think a lot of it has to do with Coach Woodley and kind of him coming in here. And what does that mean? Obviously, a name that means something in our community, combined with what his record is, what his resume is as a head coach. And so if he can just bring any of that from Grandview over to Drake, I think people are really excited to kind of see what that is. So there's been a much more talk about it this year than in previous years. And that's not a knock on any of our previous teams and coaches, because we've had some great teams and some amazing coaches here. I think just like maybe just Joe's familiarity and his name recognition in our community just really kind of has helped kind of elevate where people's interest level is at. So that'll be great. Soccer's will get going. I think that they both have teams that are positioned to make runs for a title this year. Missouri State's out of the league. Missouri State was really solid in both soccer's in the past couple of years. So love our chances to try to compete towards the top of the league. We're in the middle of hiring a new cross country and track and field coach, so hope to have that done here in the near future. And they'll take over a really proud cross country program here and kind of what that looks like. So excited for our fall sports teams. Our fall sports has been pretty strong to Drake the last handful of years, and I'm very optimistic that this will be another great year too for the Bulldogs.
I can't wait. Really eager to get back into that football stadium and start covering the Bulldogs again, Brian. But thank you again so much for doing this for me. I really appreciate it.
Justin, glad to do it. Yeah, it's been a while building up to this, so I hope that you're able to and take some time yourself and to everyone out there who's watching, have a great, safe summer, and can't wait to see everybody back around campus in the very near future for some of our fall sports activities.
You have a lot of excitement surrounding Drake. I can't wait for it. Brian, again, thank you, thank you, thank you. You enjoy the rest of your summer, and then I'm sure I'll be annoying you at every game.
Can't wait. Sounds good, Justin.
Huge thank you to Brian Hardin. Brian, I that dude has done so much for me, from a student, from a worker over at iHeart, to now a freelance podcaster, whatever you want to call what I do here. He's been amazing. Let me go to Wichita with the team when I was a student broadcaster. Let me go with the team to Albany. He's been amazing, and his resume shows. The coaches he's able to get, the teams they're able to put out, a lot of it has been because of the work Brian Hardin has done. We will have him on the show again, that is for sure. But before we wrap up and head out for the weekend, need to give a shout out to Stevens Automotive and Sale at 5320 Northwest Beaver Drive in Johnston, Iowa. 35 years of family owned and operated. Our 3 keys, of course, to why you need to go to Stevens Automotive and Sales for any of your car issues, or if you're looking to buy a new car, or if you're looking to get that car for your young kid that is getting ready to hit the road. They are the perfect place because, number one, they communicate effectively. They're always there, going to tell you how things are, and are going to do it in a way that you are able to understand. Two, they are so loyal. They are great people. They've been here for 35 years, family owned and operated in this state. You don't do that unless you're good people and loyal to the people that come into your building. And finally, my favorite part, no BS. It is such an easy route to get your car dealt with over there at Stevens Automotive and Sales, 5320 Northwest Beaver Drive in Johnston, Iowa. 35 years of family owned and operated. And when you go to Stevens Automotive, make sure to let them know that Media Row sent you. Have a great weekend. Reminder, again, I know I apologize for this, all over the place in July. I have a buddy's bachelor party this weekend, so no show on Monday, but we will be back, of course, for Wednesday and Friday of next week to get things started back up here on the Media Row podcast with me, Justin Miller, sponsored by Kelly's Little Nipper and Stevens Automotive and Sales. Have a great weekend. Thank you all so much. Like, subscribe, comment, all that great stuff. Have a great weekend. We will see you on Wednesday.